Great! It's Monsters, our favorite show!
It's starting.
11 spine-chilling episodes of Monsters TV series 1988 to 1990. Criminally underrated horror anthology with amazing practical effects. The 80s and 90s were a good time for horror fans. Besides a flurry of amazing horror flicks, there were some popular TV shows coming into prominence. Monsters was one such one, being a half-hour anthology TV series that had a successful run from 1988 to 1991. It contained diverse plots, and the focus, as the name suggests, was largely on monsters of some sorts. They explored everything from aliens to vampires and demons. There were some remarkable original creations like the Pig People and Spider-Woman. This was one of the selling points of the serial in an era of practical effects because the fans loved the authenticity on offer. Monsters undoubtedly looks cheap by today's standards, but the entertainment factor is simply undeniable. In this video, we have assembled some of the creepiest episodes of the show that you must check out for some nostalgic memories of the golden era of horror.
Before we get into the explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin.
Where's Amy? What have you done with her?
Glim-Glim, Season 1, Episode 13. In a horror sci-fi movie, if an alien lands on Earth, more often than not, it has vile intentions. That is not the case with the alien in this episode, called Glim-Glim, who crash-landed on Earth from Venus. The alien carried a virus that killed everybody except 3 people in the city. Mark's daughter and a revenge-seeking young man named Brian are the only survivors of the plague that devastated the city. However, the survivors don't realize that the alien did not intend to kill anybody at all. In fact, it was studying corpses to find a cure for the deadly disease and even created a force field so that the rest of the world would be safe. While the survivors want to kill the alien, the little girl befriends it and tries to be a bridge for the language barrier. She helps the extraterrestrial explain his real intentions, but ultimately, it doesn't quite work out. Mark and Brian see Glim-Glim interacting with the little daughter and mistake it for an attack. They end up shooting it dead, only to realize that it had no bad intentions ever.
Trying to find way to overcome the survivor's fear.
This episode was directed by Peter Stein, who was the cinematographer in popular horror hits like Pet Sematary and Friday the 13th Part 2. The alien entity here was adorable, despite the fact that it accidentally killed a few people with a virus that it brought with it. It is called Glim-Glim by the little girl, and his intentions was not to kill anybody. However, his strange appearance and high-pitched voice didn't seem friendly. Glim-Glim looked like a giant green pear that had 4 tentacle arms and 4 eyes. The script is intelligent, and some good acting adds more value to the narrative. The emotional element and the moral dilemma in the story are fascinating, and it is no surprise that this is one of the highest rated episodes of the Monsters TV series. Pool Sharks, Season 1, Episode 9. The title couldn't have been more appropriate, because that is precisely what the protagonists are engaged in. A pool battle with a lot at stake. Gabe walks in on Natasha playing a game of pool, and the deal is that if Lester wins, he would get a kiss from Natasha. However, if Lester loses, he would have to pay her for the loss. Gabe takes over the game, and it seems like he is clearly attracted to Natasha, and the feelings are mutual. The game continues, and with time, more secrets are revealed about both Gabe and Natasha. It turns out that she is a vampire who preys on men, and she has previously killed Gabe's brother. Gabe wants revenge for his dead brother, but he must play for his own life, which is the ultimate price to pay. He finally manages to win the game, and when Natasha tries to tempt him, he reveals that the pool stick is a concealed weapon and jams it in her heart. As the dying vampire bleeds on the pool table, we learn that this was precisely Gabe's plan all along.
50 points even. Time to pay the bet, Gabe.
The cast does a fabulous job with a smart storyline that moves at a brisk pace. It gives the conventional vampire story a nice spin, and it is regarded as one of the best plots of Monsters. The battle of wits and wills intensifies as the lead characters do well to portray this on screen. Tom Mason as the pool hustler and the gorgeous Rebecca Kyler Downs as the seductive vampire are impeccable. There is not much of a twist in the story, but the quality of the presentation is simply maddening. The snappy dialogue is engaging, and when the ulterior motives of Natasha and Gabe are clear, it boils down to a predictable but intense climax. Holly's House, Season 1, Episode 2. Catherine works on a popular show for kids where she controls a life-size doll. She is basically the voiceover and also manages the movements of the puppet. She enjoys her work but is also considering settling down with her partner. The animatronic doll is the star of the show and is called Holly. Things take a horrifying turn when the doll comes to malevolent life. Holly is not too happy about Catherine's decision to leave the serial. She shows her sinister side when she murders Catherine's partner by stabbing him multiple times. During the filming of an episode, everyone discovers the corpse and Catherine goes berserk with rage. She smashes the doll into pieces, and the next scene shows her in a hospital, recovering from her trauma. Whether she was the one behind the entire thing is vaguely concluded. This is an amazing shot by Theodore Gershuni, who manages to put together an engrossing story with a fast-paced narrative. The clever script leaves you in a doubt whether it's a paranormal case or just a psychological one displayed by Catherine. Marilyn Jones is brilliant as the troubled puppeteer Kathy, and the others like Perry Lang, Neil Smith, and Pamela Dean Kelly are pretty impressive in their respective roles. The look of the doll was quite creepy, and the fear quotient is high throughout the episode. You get flashbacks of Chucky from Child's Play, but it's a whole different story here. The twist, if you call it that, could have been more elaborated on. Was Catherine the psycho, or was the doll demonic? It's not all that clear. However, it still stands out as a creepy but brilliant episode, and if you are haunted by scary dolls, this one will give you a few nightmares. The Match Game, Season 1, Episode 18. The episode begins as we see a couple, Paul and Jody, planning to hang out with their friends, Matthew and Beverly, at a haunted Victorian manor. The spooky nature of the house is attractive for the young people, and they soon start a storytelling game. One person begins to narrate a story that the next person must continue. However, things take a disastrous turn when Matthew's narrative brings to life the dead owner of the house. The narrative goes further into the tragic death of the owner, and Matthew believes that his hatred stayed on. This is when the owner shows up, and Matthew desperately tries to stop him as the others run for cover. However, the monstrous dead man snaps his neck and pursues the others, who are now barricaded in a bedroom upstairs. Beverly starts to blame Paul for everything and runs out of the room only to be crushed by the zombie. Paul and Jody then use mirrors to scare him away, and Paul completes the story such that it sends the dead man back into the pond from where he rose. This episode seems like a standard slasher flick, with a group of teenagers getting stuck in a possessed mansion with some kind of undead zombie. It is probably one of the most gruesome episodes in the series, and the low budget has been handled wisely by the makers. The cast is an interesting lot, including the likes of Ashley Lawrence from Hellraiser and Michael Brandon, alongside Tori Spelling. We loved the look of the reanimated corpse, and the villa actually looked pretty real and scary. The climax is fun to watch, because the protagonists don't just hack off the head of the zombie, but find a way to defeat it. Overall, it is a great work by the director Michael Brandon, and the spooky atmosphere will make it worth your time.
He saved us. Isn't he beautiful?
The Waiting Game, Season 3, Episode 10. A terrible nuclear blowout has rendered everyone dead, and and 4 survivors are scrambling to safety in their shelters. They are the military officers who launched the missiles that ended the normal world. They are connected to each other via the walkie-talkie and stay in touch, trying to figure out a plan of survival. However, they are completely unaware that a force much older than radioactivity is reanimating the corpses of the dead. The cold, radiant wasteland is now filled with deadly creatures that are going to pose a great threat to the survivors. Eventually, someone known to them appears and claims to be one of the survivors. As they let her in, she turns out to be a vampire, and after a brief fight, it's all over for them. Post-apocalyptic dramas are always good content for horror stories, and the fluid storytelling by director Bruno Spandello adds a nice touch to this episode. We thrived in the claustrophobic tension and doomsday kind of ambience. The clever use of split screen works nicely for the narrative, and the likes of Doug McKeon, Stephen Burley, Leo Garcia, and Carrington Garland have been impressive as the survivors. The dark ending that it delivers is almost on the lines of what we expected, and it offers intelligent insight into how vampires would be the only ones benefiting from a nuclear holocaust. Clearly, this is one of the superior episodes of the show. Leavings, Season 3, Episode 17. Officer Parkhurst and Officer Mancini are 2 beat cops who notice some strange occurrences in the city. They find a homeless man with no arms and bring him to the inspector. They claim that they have previously observed people with some body parts missing, but there did not seem to be any signs of surgery. All these victims had their appendages a few days ago, and suddenly something seems to have taken them. The officers even found somebody who was assembled out of some mismatched body parts, and it is all too strange for their comfort. When they bring the issue to the inspector, he promises them to show the reality behind such incidents. As it turns out, the inspector is behind the mutilations and is a part of a project that is creating jumbled monstrous humanoids made of the body parts. He even made one of them into a cop because they would be loyal and not have an attitude problem like the 2 officers. We see a grotesque, mismatched beast shooting the officers in the end, as maniacal laughter makes for a creepy background.
You made him into a cop.
This is one hell of an enjoyable ride, as the engrossing story soon takes over the viewer. It is a great attempt by the director John Tillinger, who has brought about a pulpy sensibility to the weird premise. The cinematography plays with darkness and shadows, and Stephen Ross has done a great job with the visuals. We also love the moody jazz score that seems to blend beautifully with the narrative. The big reveal at the end had us in shock, as we loved the morbid climax. The acting performances deserve a special mention, as Clifton James, Tony Shalhoub, and John Christopher Jones pull off sturdy portrayals of their characters. Overall, this is a must-watch episode, simply for the imaginative plot and shock ending. Bughouse, Season 3, Episode 3. Ellen comes to meet her pregnant sister May and finds out that she is living in a house in the middle of nowhere. Her boyfriend Peter seems to be somewhat creepy, and nothing about the house seems right to Ellen. When she takes her concerns to May, May tells her that she has always been after the things she possessed, and she wants her to keep a distance from her boyfriend. Ellen agrees, saying Peter is not her type, but we soon see that she is seduced by Peter. The sibling rivalry gets the better of her, and she sleeps with Peter just to get even. However, May finds out and warns her to run away from the house while there still is time. She goes on to stab herself in the stomach, and Peter rushes in to go ahead with the birthing process, even though May will not survive. Ellen is horrified to see that the offspring is a giant bug, and Peter changes to take the form of a humanoid insect. She faints from the shock. The last scene sent shivers down our spine as we saw Ellen pregnant and being cared for by Peter, just like May was. It seems like it's too late for her to escape from the nightmarish house. The uncomfortable mood of the episode is heightened by all the sibling rivalry and sexual tension. The director, Kenny Myers, seems to know his way around the narrative, and the suffocating setting of the house becomes pretty unnerving at times. The cast delivers a fine performance, with the likes of Karen Sillis and Juliet Kurth perfecting the role of the sisters. Robert Kerbeck steals the show as the creepy boyfriend with a dark secret behind his identity. There is an emotional side to the tale, but the shock value is much higher. The gruesome ending is a hard-hitting punch, and this is certainly among the scariest episodes in the series. The Offering, Season 2, Episode 18. This episode has an interesting take on cancer and attributed it to insect-like beasts that cause the dreaded disease. The story picks off as we see Lewis recovering in a hospital after suffering from an accident. He seems to have had a concussion, and Dr. Hubbard is the sympathetic physician treating him. Lewis is worried about his cancer-stricken mother and visits her that night. He is shocked to see a large slimy monster injecting some tiny creatures into her, and he informs Dr. Hubbard about his visions. Naturally, the doctor doesn't believe such absurd thoughts, and he attributes it to possible hallucinations that Lewis might be experiencing following the head trauma. To save her on his own, Lewis allows himself to be exposed to some kind of radioactive radiation as he comes face to face with the monstrous slimy bug. It's his ultimate offering for his mother. The Offering hits you with an intriguing story that has been presented with expertise by the director Ernest Farino. The writing is smart and the creepy element is prevalent throughout the movie. The concept is unique, and for some, this subject matter might be distasteful. As for acting performances, Robert Krantz is great as the protagonist, and Orson Bean lends some good support. The effects are not too bad, and the actual monster that injects the slugs into people looks absolutely disgusting. The climax did leave us disappointed, and it was somewhat silly to see Lewis eating a radioactive isotope. While this is a good story, we feel that such an emotive subject could have been handled better with more sensitivity. A Bond of Silk, Season 2, Episode 3. Nash and Portia are a newlywed couple on their honeymoon. They check into a basement honeymoon suite of a hotel and are surprised when they find no inhabitants in the hotel and a giant spider web in their room. Things take a turn when Nash gets stuck in the huge web and the room is locked, the only escape being an elevator that opens into the basement. The dim-witted husband gets further and further trapped into the web, and the wife realizes that it is the work of a real spider. Her guess is proven right when the elevator brings with it a massive arachnid that dives straight for Nash and leaves him dead. Portia is pretty resourceful and manages to evade the spider by stepping into the elevator. She uses the pin in her hair and pushes the elevator button, and the spider is crushed as it tries to get to her. She does have a narrow escape, but there is a price to pay: the loss of a husband on the very first day of their honeymoon. This story adds a new dimension to the old saying, if something is too good to be true, it probably is. The way the couple gets the room is almost miraculous, and the stupid decisions of Nash did bring about his death. The special effects are nothing special, but the makers wisely keep the spider off screen for much of the episode to add to the suspense. The stop-motion effects used for the spider don't make it believable, but it works fine for a TV episode. We love that they didn't try to give any explanation about how the spider got there, because short films are supposed to be more about your imagination. A Bond of Silk is a perfectly watchable short that is a mini creature feature mixed with the thrills of a horror flick. The Hole, Season 3, Episode 6. The story is premised during the Vietnam War and starts off with two US Marines and their South Vietnamese guide trapped in the confusing underground tunnels laid out by the Viet Cong guerrillas. Sergeant Kenner, Corporal Torres, and their guide tried to blast their way into the underground base of the insurgents, but they are now stuck themselves. They learn from a wounded VC soldier that they were digging up the tunnels through an old burial ground, and now the dead are back for revenge. However, the soldier dies before he can reveal anything more. The group starts to panic as the dead pick them off one by one until the last survivor thinks he has made it out of the ground. As he crawls out of the nightmarish tunnels, we see skeletal hands drag him back. This is a great example of the wonders that can be accomplished with the simplest of storytelling. The premise is nothing complicated, but the unnerving narrative will spook even hardcore horror fans. The claustrophobic tone of the plot is going to test the viewer, and the visuals of the chaotic environment will send your heartbeat racing faster. The low budget of the series doesn't show on this episode, and the makeup effects are impressive. We loved the look of the skeletal zombies, while the grim ending was perfect for the plot. We strongly recommend this particular episode if you want to enjoy a spooky 20 minutes. Far Below, Season 2, Episode 19. Dr. Vernon Rathmore is charged with overseeing the New York subway. It seems like they spend an awful lot on the maintenance crew that is led by Dr. Vernon. Alex Kritz is an uptight suit who is assigned to investigate the high maintenance charges. He soon finds out that the group is trying to hide a dark secret. They have to deal with a crazy infestation of mutant creatures in the tunnel. These creatures have a liking for human flesh and are often confined within the tunnels because any bright light burns them. Vernon claims that they must keep it a secret so that people do not stop riding the subway and clog up traffic. Alex does not seem to agree, and he wants the armies brought in to eliminate the creatures. His arrogance, however, turns to please when Dr. Vernon reveals that he won't be leaving the place alive. We learn that Dr. Vernon is actually maintaining these creatures and has even fathered a child with one of them. The show ends with the mutant that is seemingly Dr. Vernon's wife proceeding to eat Alex alive. This is quite a decent episode in the series, and the creepy atmosphere is breathtaking. Michael McDowell directed it, and it is a unique creature feature with mutants living in the subway tunnels. Right from the start, the eeriness is built up, and we see it all culminating in a twisted climax. We like the fact that this episode plays on our fears and fascinations of the unseen. Didn't we all let our imaginations run loose as a child, wondering what lurked in the darkness of tunnels? There is some gore in the form of a severed leg and bloodshed, but it is nothing extreme. The sets are well constructed, and the shadowy cinematography makes things all the more mysterious. We love the look of the deadly albino mutants, and their freaky nature made for an impressive episode on monsters.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.